All right. Welcome back for episode 111. That's 111 of Freight 360. And surprisingly, I am chipper, even though my Bills lost on Monday night. But we're back for another great episode. We'll get into that in just a second. But Ben, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. Weather's beautiful down here. I got literally no complaints. Got some family coming into town, and it'll be my birthday next week, so I'll be turning 40.
Yeah, 28th.
Yeah.
Nice. Thursday next week, man. Well, happy early birthday to you. We'll give you a shout out next week as well. I'm on the road this week. I'm down in Nashville, Tennessee. Company I work for, Pierce Worldwide Logistics. Down in Brentwood, Tennessee. Got to go sit 50-yard line club seats at the game Monday night.
I didn't know that. I didn't get the details on the seats. So I mean, at the very least, it had to be.
It was awesome. Really. It was a good experience. One of the best football games that I think I've ever been to and really watched. It was such an offensive power there. But, let's just talk about the game right now and get this over with. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Josh Allen, 4th and 1 at the end of the game. Anyone that was watching Monday Night Football saw that he did not convert. Some people are giving him crap saying that was the wrong – or giving the play call crap saying that was the wrong play for the Bills coaches to call. I disagree. Prior to Monday night, Josh Allen was 13 for 14 on converting that same play, and he's 13 for 15 on it now. So, yep. But 34-31, I think, was the final. It was could have been tied up with a field goal, but oh well. It is what it is. Around the horn, your Steelers won.
They did,
and I was an idiot last week.
Overtime.
Russell Wilson has a broken finger, and I totally forgot. And I was like, why is Pittsburgh favored in this game against the Seahawks? But that is exactly why. So.
Take a win wherever you get them, as far as this season goes. So,
yeah, well, at least one of us got a win.
Yeah,
this weekend. So, other than that, Cardinals I think are still undefeated. Baltimore had a blowout game against Cleveland. That's your division right there, right? So,
yeah.
But Red Sox are actually. I got a TV right next to me. Game 5 of the ALCS is currently being played. It's tied 2-2. Red Sox got blown out 9-2 last night, which was Tuesday night. But, hey, looks like it could be a Red Sox-Atlanta Braves World Series. We'll see what happens. Got a couple games left, but that's, I think, where it's trending. That's enough for sports for now. Bills are off next week anyway, so I got no losses to worry about. So 4-2 going into Dubai. So, hey, welcome back to Freight 360. Glad you're with us. Keep sharing us with your friends. Dude, we've been getting blown up with questions and feedback from our listeners. We're going to just answer a bunch of questions. Got some good ones in here.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
You noticed a lot, Ben? Just a lot more people reaching out to us, asking for help and advice and questions on things. I've seen a huge, huge spike in it.
Yeah, and I think, obviously the YouTube channel's getting a lot more traction. We're releasing the podcast on YouTube as a video form, so lots of people seem to be enjoying that. The webinar went really well with DAT. We had a great turnout over that. I think there was something like 1,700 people or something registered for it. I know we both really enjoyed doing that, so, that was a lot of fun. I know we picked up a lot of people through that. Everything just seems to be moving in the right direction. And I think more importantly than anything, though, more of the people we've been working with on a one-on-one basis have reached out to me just even recently and said, their businesses are doing better than ever. They are hitting the metrics, their goals. When we first started working with them, some of them like a year and a half ago now, that are just finally hitting on all cylinders. They're starting to hire better people. And, it all takes time. And it's really nice to hear from everybody that we've worked with throughout, even our short, brief history are doing really well. Our industry's in the news. So, lots of really interesting stuff as it relates to shipping.
I agree. I'll tell you, group coaching has been doing really good. A lot of great conversations. I almost wish we had more than an hour to do it when we do it, but we gotta make sure we keep everybody only for as long as that 1 hour is, and let them get back to the grind. But a lot of great successes in this past week's session. So if you haven't checked out coaching, check it out, the group. If you get the Freight Broker Basics course, you get a free month. I know a lot of people have not taken advantage of that, so make sure you hop in if you bought the course. There's a coupon code that you would have got in the email, and that'll get you a free month. So,
and here's the The other nice piece that I wanted to mention and to clarify for anybody out there considering that option, what's really nice is it's turned into a really collaborative group where everybody shares and helps each other. But I really see the biggest benefit to everybody by being able to get that outside perspective amongst their peers, right? Because most of our audience, and I think a lot of people too, are working at some point from home. And it's just nice to get that outside feedback when you're kind of siloed by yourself, especially if you're early on in your prospecting career. It's really nice to be able to go and ask and hear what your peers are doing, hear what calls they're making, hear the response, and really just get feedback on knowing you're still going down the right, avenues, paths, whatever, what have you.
Yeah. So to all those out there having good successes right now, this is for you.
It never gets old.
That was a round of applause. So, well, cool. Before we get into all the long list of Q&A here today, Ben, let's get a shout out to our friends over at DAT who we just did the webinar with. But
yep, taking the guesswork out of freight with DAT. The DAT Load Board Network is the largest on-demand freight marketplace in North America, connecting freight brokers with available capacity on any lane. Grow your business with tools that allow you to find new business partners. Plus, you can quickly qualify and onboard new carriers. And with the industry's leading freight rate data, you can make clear and confident pricing decisions. Check out the show notes for a free month of Trucker's Edge, Power, and DAT Express.
You know what I love about DAT Power? And like I said, we practice what we preach. I'm helping one of my agents out right now that has, like many other brokers, ran into the issue of his regular carriers aren't being so loyal and they're chasing higher paying freight. So we're using the DAT directory to source every reefer carrier domiciled out of the location that his backhaul lane that he's trying to get. We're finding all of them right now, getting their information, and we're going to do a good old email campaign showing them what lanes we have available. And that tool's great. So you can do the same thing with your TMS if you got a carrier database in there and all that stuff. But man, I love it.
Yeah, but that's a great way to kind of outreach and just kind of nudge and be like, kind of not out of sight, out of mind, and just being at the forefront of carriers' minds that like, hey, you have these lanes and you're looking for more capacity. And if they see them consistent enough, they're going to start reaching out and saying, hey, hey, this might be a good fit. So you've had this lane for the past few weeks. Don't be surprised if it doesn't happen in your first email. All of it takes consistency and all of it takes time.
Yep, you're right. All right, so let's get into our questions today. These are great. So first of all, I like this first one. The question is, how do I handle the question, quote, what's the best you can do, end quote, when it's from a carrier? So let's say, for example, you get on the phone, right? You talk to Vlad or whoever the dispatcher or the carrier is, right? And maybe you say, hey, this is paying $3,200. And their first response is, what's the best you can do? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of angles to this. And we've all run into it, whether it's in brokerage or somewhere else. People want a deal, right? I'll tell you this. A lot of brokers, they know it's going to come. So they will start lower than they're actually willing to pay.
Yep.
Because they need to in order to come back and make these people – I feel like the dispatchers and carriers, they want to feel like, ooh, I got more money out of him than he wanted to pay.
Yeah.
Right? You had a stat on it months ago about not using like round or even numbers, right? Having like a specific rate that's like makes someone feel like it's very
believable,
detailed, right?
Yeah, like odd pricing is a really good technique that you can use to make it honestly appear as if that is the highest you can go, right? And I know brokers that still do that. Like, hey, maybe their top rate is 900 and they're going to stop at 888. Like, look, this is my shipper max. Like, I'll give you everything I have in it. And this is the part where like you've got to sell it a little bit too, right? You've got to sell that to the carrier that this is all you have, right? So in some cases, I've had to sell that load where that is all I have, and my posted rate. And that's the thing, that's the drawback, right? Because if you leave a little bit in the tank, right, to be able to give them, that means you're a little less competitive on the load board if you're posting your rate. So there's give and take on either side. Yep. But you've really got to sell that. It's got to be to that carrier like, look, If you're posted at 1,000, like, look, this is the max I've got. I've already got everything I've got in it. I've got it all posted on the board. They really won't budge. Is there any way we can make this work? What are you guys looking for on this? And then offering maybe something else. Like you've brought this up many times. Like, I'll be more than happy to go look at the boards to try to find you a backhaul out of there. Maybe I even have another backhaul from another customer where I'm delivering that I can help that customer out with. Do something to make them feel as if they've won.
There's a tool in a lot of TMSs too that'll help you lock down capacity based on all your active loads right now. Is anyone delivering near where this next load is going out of? And that's a quick way to use technology if you already have it to do that. I know like McLeod has that tool. It's called Continuous Movements. We had it at the last brokerage I was with. It was a proprietary TMS, but it was basically it was looking for what we called delivering loads, right? So if I'm trying to cover this load, it'll scan the system and say, hey, it's picking up in Chicago. Who do I have delivering in Chicago in the next few days that has that same equipment type? So there's a lot of cool stuff out there to do that. Now, the other part of this too is you may want to ask this carrier, what are they looking for, right? Like how much what do they have in their mind? Because there is a chance that you guys are on way different ends of the spectrum as far as your expectation. Like you might say 3,200, but my max sell rate's 3,400, and they might say 4,500, and the cheapest they'll take it for is 4,200, and it's like you're not even in the ballpark. You're way off.
And that's that other little dance, right? Like the first person to speak loses, I've heard, right? And you always get in this, and I remember training brokers, and especially the big brokerages, they'll train on this of, you try to hem-haw to get them to answer first. Like, well, what's your max on this? Well, like, where are you looking to be? Like, what are you looking for? Well, just tell me what you have and I'll let you know if it works. And then you get this back and forth of like this stalemate, right? And the theory is the first person to say anything why they're at a disadvantage is now the other person has more information. So like there is some validity to that in negotiation, but the reality is like I try to get through it, and I also try to sell on consistency, because to be honest, if it isn't a hot load or a spot load that is a one-off for my customer, I am going to try to get that carrier into my carrier base. My mind always wants to go towards how do I get more long-term benefit, not just cover a load. So even if I have a carrier and I'm way off, let's say they want 45 in your example, and I'm at 32, right? I might go to them, look, hey, like maybe this doesn't work for you today, but do you guys look for this lane often? Are you in this area every week?
Yes.
Do you have other drivers here every week, right? Because maybe this doesn't work today, but let me write your info down, because if you're there often, maybe we can make this work, because the value add to them is now they don't have to look for a load every week, and you're saving them.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it time and time again, right? Every one of those phone calls should have some value brought out of it when you're talking to a carrier, right? Learn a little bit more about them, log those notes in your CRM, in your TMS, all that stuff.
And here's another couple questions on this same question is ask them like, hey, before you get to the negotiation, before they jump right into the math and the numbers, right? Ask them like, hey, is your driver looking to get home? Is he in the middle of his week? Is he fresh on hours? What are you guys looking for? Are you looking for direction, or are you guys looking for your highest paying load? I can find that out without ever even having to get to the back and forth, right? Because to your point, if he's going to just be honest, say, look, I'm just looking for the highest paying load. I don't care what direction. Okay, we're not a good fit. I'll move to the next one. I don't need to waste my time, theirs or ours.
Yep. That's 100% true. I love it. Okay, our next question here. This is about the difference in a big and a small brokerage. So the question is, what are the pros and cons of working for a small brokerage versus a big brokerage? The big name brokerages out there, for example, right? Your C.H. Robinson, Coyote, TQL, right? These are national big mega brokers that they're billion-dollar revenue plus companies, thousands of brokers, branches all over the place. And then you've got your little mom and pop shops, right, that may just be one little office in your town, and there's 10 or 12 people working there, right? So what are the pros and cons to each one? I will tell you I'll let you speak to the big one, but let me tell you about the smaller brokerage side, okay? So I wouldn't call Pierce a small brokerage, but because we have a lot of agents.
Mid-size.
But but like if you were to go back, 15 years, right, when there really wasn't a big agent there wasn't a lot of agents really in the industry compared to now. But say, the size of our company, just the brokerage, probably only was, less than 20 people. Now, the benefit there is you are never going to be just a number, right? You are going to get to know each and every person very, very well. There's a lot less corporate tape and hoops to jump through to try to get something done. It's fairly easy to get a change to something done as far as like an SOP or a procedure. So let's say, for example, it's being done this way right now, but this, because of this one customer, I want to see if we can change our insurance to cover this. And that's a lot easier than if you're one of thousands that, no, this is just the way that it is for us. On the downside of a smaller brokerage, and I didn't experience this, but I know of smaller brokerages that have run into issues with, they didn't necessarily have, since they don't have as many people, they never had a chance to get those home run hitting brokers on their team. So growth was slower. They also may have had carriers that never heard of their brokerage before. Maybe tougher for cash flow and establishing credit and the ability to take some risks on certain customers. So, there's some simple pros and cons on the smaller brokerage. I also tell you in a smaller brokerage pro, you are not competing against as many people, right? So, you're not worried, is this account taken by another broker in another office that I've never met before? So what do you think about the big size ones, Ben?
You covered a lot of them. I would say, the ones that are obvious for being at a big brokerage are you have a lot of weight you could throw around. So the name typically gets some recognition, gets you some
They know who you are.
Right out of the gate, right? Same with the carrier base. You're going to have access to just more faster as it relates to carriers. For the simple fact
Think about all the data in your TMS already, too.
The data, like your lane data, knowing what your company has paid, knowing what other, and that also is a drawback, right? Because even with that data, and one of the things I had learned are like, it means very different things based on who was booking it, who was willing to pay for it, what their shipper was. So the numbers have a lot of subjectivity to it. And the more you have, the more the range is. So there's a drawback, pro and con, I think, to that information. To your other point, like you could take some larger risks, like some of my larger accounts, like I was able to basically put the company's name on a piece of paper without having to insure some of the things because they're large enough that the customers know the financial well-being could be covered literally in a check if it was necessary. Like, and that happens. They'll cut checks for 6 figures to just make things right to keep customers happy. That's an advantage. Big drawbacks. Very hard to get accounts in your name. So while it's easier to get an account to maybe talk to you or to open up at first, you still have a large difficulty in getting accounts in your name to be able to reach out to because your biggest barrier to entry are your peers. All of those things that are assets are a drawback when it comes to prospecting. I would say another big drawback, though, is like when you're at a bigger brokerage, like you have your hands tied in regards to like what margins you need to charge, what you need to make. And like you really don't have the ability to be nimble in a way that our business like rewards it. For example, like I had access to massive volumes at lower margin loads for like one customer at a big brokerage, and they were going to be like $60 a load. And we just couldn't get them approved because the break even they considered was a little above that. But the reality was we could have pushed hundreds of these through a week and literally made tens of thousands of dollars. And I just never could get it approved because that variable number was just below the company's policy. And even, I literally took that to the CFO and I couldn't get it signed off on. And there are things that like you're literally not going to be able to do. And it reminded me of being a kid when you ask your parents to go somewhere and they just go, no. Why? Because we said so. And you're like, but I've got valid reasons and I made the case and I can lay it out. At the end of the day, you just have to live with it sometimes.
I think also, and my input here comes from my experience dealing with agents that have come from both big and smaller brokerages, but the ones that came from the big brokerages, I had people that I knew I wouldn't bring on board as an agent because they didn't make it at a TQL or somewhere else. I knew what you had to hit. And if you weren't there for 6 months, it tells me you didn't make it. That's why you were only there for 5 or 5.5 months.
That's true.
But on the contrary, if I saw someone that was there for like 3-4 years, they obviously were doing something right. Now, let me talk about a little bit of the danger on the smaller brokerage side. And I talk to people like this all the time that they've only had one job in brokerage, and it's been with one small broker, and I hear about just the crap that they tell me, and I'm like, that's insane. But it's all they know, because their boss, who owned the brokerage, wasn't that good of a boss, wasn't a very good business owner and a manager and a leader. And I'm like, what do you mean you couldn't go do this? Because I can't go try to get military freight because we've never done that before. It's like, well, of course there's going to be a first for everything, right? So
the way we've always done it.
I had someone tell me this morning that she's like, I want to do LTL. My boss says, no, we don't do that. And I was like, well, probably don't have any LTL carriers that you're set up with, and your pricing wouldn't be good. But there's other ways to do that. But for the boss to just tell her, like, no, we don't do that, and that's the end of the conversation, those are some potential drawbacks of a smaller brokerage. So
they are.
Yeah.
And, I mean, humans are humans, and people only know what they know, and you don't know what you don't know. And in a lot of small businesses, that's really, kind of the headwall you run into. But honestly, that's one of the reasons why we do this, why we do the show, why we put out the content, is to try to make information more readily available to everybody. Because honestly, what is the main reason why most businesses don't do those things? It's fear. It's always fear. It's scared. It's, I don't know the risk. I don't know what to do. And it's just easier to say no and then to just leave it at that. But I've found that, even in other industries, like if I've had managers like this and I want to go do something different, like I'm going to make the case and I'm going to try to make it over a long enough period. I'm going to try to mitigate the risks. But you want to be sure, just like in selling a shipper, ask a lot of questions to do your best to understand why that answer exists in the first place. Because it may be fear, but it may be that they had an agent that tried to do this a year and a half ago, ran up a couple $100,000, couldn't invoice for it, and they had to write it off, and they don't want to do it again. And maybe there is a valid justification, but you need to ask these questions instead of assume.
A small brokerage will likely be burned once and never make that mistake again, where a larger brokerage has the ability to take risk a second time in hopes for a better outcome.
That's also true.
Yeah. And if you see me, I know for people listening, you can't see me, but Ben, I know you can, and anyone on YouTube, I keep looking over at this Red Sox game. The Houston Astros scored a home run, so the Red Sox are down 1-0. But anyway, as we record here on Wednesday, next question. What should a carrier do if they realize that they've been given a double brokered load? This is interesting. And that's kind of a cool question because we usually talk about it from the broker's perspective. You know what I mean? So I've never been a carrier that has been given a double brokered load. I don't work on the asset side of our company. But I'm gonna backwards talk this based on the way that kind of our principles as a broker, how you should treat it, right? So number one, who's the bad guy in the situation? It's the carrier that double brokered it, right? The carrier that actually loaded it, that didn't know, right? They didn't do anything wrong. What they did do is they realized something was off.
But we're assuming that it wasn't done correctly, right? Aren't we assuming that that this is?
I guess in this, I'm assuming this, that let's say you're a broker and I'm a carrier, right?
Yeah.
You brokered a load out to some other carrier, and then they brokered it to me because I thought they were just the regular broker. I had no idea. And then I find out when I go to pick up that the customer is a customer of yours, Ben, right? And I'm like, wait a second. Who's Ben? I thought it was this other guy that I got the load from. And I'm like, this sounds weird. So here's what you want to do, right? You want to find out who is the actual broker whose load that was. I want to find out who is Ben. How do I get a hold of Ben? And once I can get in touch with you and tell you, hey, I don't know who you hired for this load, but it got brokered to me by this other guy, and let's get this worked out. Because ultimately, what should happen is the guy that double brokered it, drop him or her out of the equation. They're done, right? They don't get to make any money off this. What should happen is whoever actually hauled the load, this carrier that is asking this question, should now be invoicing you, Ben, directly. And keep the other guy out of it. That's the way I see it. So my advice is try to find out from your receiver, however you're identifying that it was double brokered, find out who the original broker was, get a hold of them, let them know as soon as possible, because there's a lot of risk here, right? That broker had no idea what insurance you have as a carrier, so they probably want to make sure that everything go okay, first of all. If not, we got a possible dumpster fire going on here.
I think that's also true, but I will say that like there is a possibility that this was done correctly, right? Let's just say that like, we talked about...
Tell me how.
So in group coaching, we talked about this week, right? To where like some of your agents work with forwarders, right? Which are brokers.
Yeah, I call that a co-broker though.
Yeah. I mean, correct. And I guess we're going to say that since it was double brokered, it was technically done unethically. Because I'm like, a lot of freight forwarders work with brokers. And I'm like, I as a broker, and we were talking about this yesterday, like I worked with Landstar. And Landstar primarily would give me their asset-based trucks. That's why I used them. But occasionally we would get jammed up and my shipper just needed a load. And the Landstar brokerage and myself would both work the load boards until we got a truck. And if Landstar got that truck for me, I made sure that I dispatched that driver so that I could vet their insurance, run their MC. And to be honest, I made sure I paid Landstar a margin because they literally hustled to find the truck that I couldn't find.
Yeah. And I would call that co-brokering because it is. And that driver is not unaware of what's going on.
Correct. And that's the big caveat.
So it sounded like, and maybe I read the question wrong. To me, the question sounded like this carrier's asking like, something's wrong here. This seems fishy. And I'm just kind of realizing it. What should I do? So,
and that's also true. Like, because if you feel like something's fishy, you should ask the questions and find out. Absolutely. Because, and again, not a lawyer, but like, I'm fairly certain though that like at the end of the day, any carrier that picks up the load and the freight hits their truck, they're legally owed the money, regardless of transit touched in between.
Absolutely. Good question, man. The double brokering. I feel like we've talked on this point quite a bit in the recent times, and I'm not surprised. Just the way the capacity is right now, and everyone's trying to make an extra buck on the carrier side. I'm not surprised to see if it's popping up more.
Here's the other thing too. Something else that we talked about in group, right? Is that every one of the large brokerages works with the other large brokerages because there are carriers that just had something happen with some broker at one large company and they just won't work with that company, and that's their right. So what happens is you end up with a portion of the entire carrier base that just won't work with some of the big companies. So then those big companies reach out to the other big companies and then they get capacity and it's shared in a lot of cases. But again, through co-brokering agreements, it's above board, it's transparent, everybody is aware of what's happening, nobody is intentionally being misled, and that's the big difference.
Absolutely. All right, let's go to our next question. Is it feasible to make $4,000 to $6,000 per month in my first year as a broker? Let me tell you this. If you are not making $4,000 a month, you will not be employed at a lot of these large brokerages anymore because let's say by the end of your first year, Ben, what would you expect a big box brokerage to want you to have in profit per week? We're talking like 8, 10K, something like that?
Per week, it's usually about 4K a week, and it's about 12 to 16 on a monthly basis. So right around there is where you should be after your first year. Yep,
and do the math on it. If you're making, let's say, 20, 25% commission, or maybe you're making 15% plus base, you're going to be making, you'll be making like 50 grand a year at that 4K a week type of level. I will also tell you that if you're an agent, right, and you're making 4 to 6K per month, you're not producing a whole lot. Even if you're at like a 50% or a 60% split, do the math on it. You're really only doing, 7, 8K a month, and if you're at like a 70%, you're doing 6K, something like that. So that's I don't call those good numbers. Yeah, I'd like to see a broker when they're a year in. If you're not doing like 10K a month, I don't know if I would. I don't know if I typically wouldn't call that successful, depending on the situation. But like the big brokerages, they expect you to be doing that kind of business.
You have to, you're not going to have a seat anymore because that's what it costs to maintain that seat. And I mean, like and that's back to the earlier question, pros and cons, big versus small brokerage. you're at a smaller commission percentage at the larger. To Nate's point, like they're usually 22 to 25, 20 to 25. So what you make per week ends up.
Hold on, I'm going to pause you right there. Do you remember when we talked with Kevin Hill? There was a FreightWave survey done. The average, and this came out in one of our recent videos or blogs we did, but essentially they pulled like a bunch of the W-2 models. The average pay scale was like 40K base plus 13 point something percent commission. So it's even lower percentage at some of these companies. But yeah, if you're on like a straight commission, 25%, yeah.
And that is really interesting. But I was also talking with somebody else about that this week. What you don't know about that number is that 13 on top of their base? Because the 25 is you've got to make your base and then you get above it. So you basically have to earn what you're already getting before you get to commission. And then in some companies I've worked with and done consulting with, like you get your base and every dollar you get on top of that. So I can see how you end up with, maybe a 13% because effectively it probably is a little higher.
You're right. And there's really three ways that we just outlined right there, right? You could be like base and then you get commission on every penny you produce from, $1, right? Or you could be base and you don't hit a commission until, you hit a certain level. Or you could be on a draw, right? Where they're going to forward you a commission to make it feel like a base. And then once you start outperforming that, you got to pay back that draw. There's all kinds of ways.
But again, another advantage to being on the smaller side of things, you've got flexibility as the owner of a company and as an employee. Ask these questions. Likely, if you're interviewing at a smaller company, they may have the ability to do some things creative that work for everybody involved. But again, you typically get to keep more of the pie at the smaller brokerage, but you also tend to have more responsibilities because there's just less people that work there.
Absolutely. Good question. All right, next. What should I do if the carrier does not send me their BOL? I think this is pretty easy to answer.
Facebook stalk them until they call you back.
They reach out to them and request it. You need that BOL, all right? I think newer people often forget the importance of certain things like this. So a bill of lading is a legal, binding, contractual document, okay? It's so important, and we've talked about this before. Let's say there's a discrepancy on the temperature that a reefer was supposed to be set at, right? Email said this, phone call, they told me this. Whatever's on the BOL, that is what truly is the binding information right there. In addition, that BOL gets signed at the pickup and at the delivery, right? There's 3 spots. You've got the shipper, the driver, and the receiver all signing it, agreeing to what happened, right? Now, if that bill of lading is not sent in, you don't have legal proof that load was delivered. Therefore, you should never even consider closing out that load and paying a driver because you have no idea if it actually delivered. If there was a claim on it, because that BOL will list any damages, shortages, you name it.
Everything. At the end of the day, that's the document that matters. Without it, you really can't invoice. You can't get paid. That's where you verify detention, check-in, check-out times, everything and anything involved in the entire shipment. That's what the document's for.
So a good best practice is some brokers, what they'll do, and I like this, is they'll tell the driver, hey, just send your paperwork in, but take a picture of the BOL when it's signed at the receiver. That way I know we're good and there's no issues, right? And that gives you peace of mind.
And the next way that and again, right, it's, what is it? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? Like, get ahead of this. When
you're like the Proverbs guy. I love it.
When you talk to your drivers, right, you want to tell them why you need the BOL, right? Like, look, the faster I get this, the less delays you have in getting paid. That alone usually gets you most every one of your BOLs on time. And when you're check calling them, when he tells you he's at the receiver, remind them, hey, do me a favor. Can you just text me a picture to your point? Hey, when you get done with this so that I have it right now. Or, hey, can you scan it and shoot me a copy when you get back to your truck? That way there's no delay in invoicing it. I can get this over to the customer and get your detention approved or whatnot.
So here's something that we actually have been doing this week. I got one of my guys doing a big oil rig project, and they needed a ton of credit. And we really never worked with this customer before. We're like, we have to find a creative way to do this because we don't have enough information on them. We don't have any history with them. And how are we going to give them hundreds of thousands of dollars in credit out the gate with zero experience and, a simple credit report? So what we were doing is the customer agreed to pay upon delivery, and we would keep re-upping replenishing his credit line. So to speed that up, we're getting pictures of BOLs sent in. The accounting team knows, all right, it's good. We can go ahead and invoice. The customer goes ahead and wires a chunk of money over. Boom, that credit line is replenished, right? And when the whole project's all said and done, we didn't have to expose ourselves more than we needed to. So,
also, another great point to the big brokerages versus the smaller ones. You can take on a lot more risk with the bigger companies. They have deeper pockets. That's usually, and that's to another point why some of the smaller brokerages won't do certain things, is because the risk really isn't worth it. Like, I mean, when you talk about some commodities like eggs or even like raspberries or asparagus, like there's a reason, because like you lose one, you're back 50,000 into the hole. And like, how many loads you got to run to get back up to that? It's just not worth the exposure. Yeah, maybe you can make $600-700 a load, but one of these goes wrong and then the carrier's insurance. I mean, there's just a lot of risk there.
Yep.
And you can play. I mean, you have almost house money at the bigger companies because they want that and they're willing to take it. They know that, and they keep pushing you to do more of it.
You're absolutely correct. So true. All right. Last question. And this question was a lot longer, and we had emailed back and forth a couple times. But in a nutshell, this guy's a broker, and he's asking, how do I deal with this situation, basically? I have a carrier that has a factoring company, and that factoring company is telling me that I'm not credit worthy enough for me to move a load for X amount, right? Or for me to have a load for X amount to pay them. Man, factoring companies are weird. They are very, very weird. What I will tell you is whenever you run into a credit worthiness type of situation, right? And again, this guy's been in business, I think it was like at least a year. Okay.
So it wasn't like a couple weeks in.
No. So here's the deal. Yeah. I mean, if you're in business brand new, you're going to have your own factoring company to solve these problems for you, because a carrier is going to know they're getting paid in that situation, then, right? Or their factoring company, for that matter, is going to know they're getting paid when it's coming from some other big box factor down the street or across the country. But if you've been in business for a year, you've got a track record, right? It may not be with that carrier or with their factoring company, but you've got references. You've got data and financials that you can show them, right? Now, if you are truly in a bad financial spot after a year, then you've got other things to work on, and it's, we can't just give you the magic sauce on how to fix this. But if you are truly in good financial shape, you are paying carriers on time, this stuff is reported on load boards, right? You can see days to pay on DAT and on Truck Stop, okay? So what I'd tell you is try to get creative. I mean, even when we're trying to give credit to a shipper that doesn't necessarily have the ability for us to just say, yeah, go ahead and have this credit. Like I just gave you that example about trying to be creative and work a certain situation with them. But we've had scenarios too where we're like, hey, let me, we'll do a credit application if we absolutely need to, and we'll ask for some references and we'll make the quick calls. The same thing can go with the carrier. If you got a carrier, you're unsure on their credibility, you might want to ask for 3 references of other brokers that they've hauled for, and just call those brokers. Just, hey, you guys move a load with so-and-so. And I know I'm kind of getting off the factoring part, but there's a lot of subjectiveness that goes into all of the relational pieces to freight brokering, right? It's not just whatever's on paper, whatever the number or the score is everything. That's just not the case.
And I know some people that I've worked with, what they've done is like they've paid cash and then they've contacted that factoring company and said, look, I'll pay cash, but I want you to report this transaction. So at least gets me towards my credit, right? So yeah, even though maybe you didn't get to utilize credit, you're able to build it every time you're paying cash for these loads, as long as you notify the factoring company why you're doing it, how you're doing it, what you're doing it.
Yep, absolutely. And that's the thing too, is a lot of people don't report that good data, and that can hurt you. So, man, good stuff. A lot of good questions there. That's it for the questions. I did want to give a shout out to our friends over at Lean Solutions Group. Man, they're killing it for us, right? Obviously, I think we picked 2 of the best organizations that align with our values and our mission to be sponsors of the Freight 360 podcast and of Freight 360 overall. Lean's doing great things, right? we talk about it every week, right? Staffing, that's putting bodies in seats, whether that's for, an accounting person, someone else in the back office, a dispatcher. They've got lean sales, which is your account managers or your sales reps, lean tech and lean marketing. So if you need websites built, anything technologically done, or social media managed, or just any kind of branding related stuff, they really do it all. And they have grown so much as we've had them as a partner with us. So check them out at leangroup.com. Again, we use them on the tech and the marketing side. They are so great to work with. I can't wait to have Trey on here again. What do we got? What do we got coming up the pipeline here, Ben? Anything fun, exciting?
Off the top of my head, you kind of put me on the spot with literally just drew a blank.
Hey, to be determined, there'll be a DAT Part 2 webinar.
I think we're going to do them on a regular basis now. Yeah, like at the very least quarterly, but they're going to be happening fairly regularly. So we're going to be like moving into like some type of schedule. So anybody that was on it that is listening, we will be doing a follow up to that one. So I'm really excited to do that. Had a lot of fun doing the first one. I think the next one's going to be every bit as good as the last. Still doing a lot of the stuff with the TIA. We've got, I think our next session with them is like in November. But, they're running the new broker success program. We're doing a lot of stuff with them.
Yeah. So as far as content that we put out for free, though, I mean, you guys have been getting the podcast every Friday. It's on YouTube now, so you can watch it on YouTube. It also drops Friday there. YouTube, we're launching educational and how-to and Q&A type question and response videos, usually on the weekends that we're starting to release them. We'll have a coinciding blog once a week that's going out. We've got our newsletter that's going out every single week, and we try to give you a recap of some of that content in the newsletter, let you know what's going on. But, I mean, hey, we're putting out – here's the great thing, man. We're at this point, we are a well-oiled machine, and we have found a very, very efficient way to get our knowledge and experience out to everyone that's listening and that consumes our content. And we're just going to keep doing it because we love it. You guys are awesome.
And this is one of the parts that's most enjoyable, right? Was it like, I'm sure there'll be still more headaches as we grow and, things transition to other things. But like a lot of this coming together of the past year, it just really makes me, I don't know, just happy. It's nice to see like our website's up, it all functions, like everything is doing what it's supposed to do. We're able to, we work with consultants. We work with YouTube consultants. So if you are a fan of our show, you'll see it changing. You're seeing the production quality change. Even this platform right now, we just picked up a couple weeks ago, Riverside, which is fantastic. And I think all of these things are just, I don't know, it's more and more enjoyable. I'm having more and more fun doing this every week. It means it was the right fit for us when we
Absolutely.
did this a long time ago.
Yeah, man. Next week, do you want to give a little teaser on the content of the episode?
Yeah, we're going to be doing freight brokerage communication. So we're going to be covering best practices, standard operating procedures for like how to structure even like emails, when are like best ways to communicate, how you're actually communicating, different tips and tricks that I've picked up just using email and things. But I think it's, it like goes without saying that communication is very important in an industry where like that's literally all you're doing is conveying information. But I realize we just really haven't covered how would you do that, right? Like how would you structure the email? What would you put in the subject lines? How often are you emailing updates? How do you deal with your carriers? And there's some just nuanced things that like I've noticed that I know you and I do that I think are going to be really great to share with everybody. So should be a good show next week.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. I'm looking forward to it. Steelers got a game this week.
Dude, but I lost track who it was. I checked yesterday.
Well, don't ask me to give any NFL predictions because I was terrible apparently last week. I didn't know Russell Wilson's finger was broken. I thought the Bills were going to win by 1 million, and they lost.
Halloween, Steelers versus the Browns. Should be a really good game just because it's the Browns.
Steelers-Browns, when is that?
October 31st.
Oh, Halloween.
Yep,
yeah.
Halloween.
Oh, so you guys have a bye week?
It looks like, yeah, you're right, because that is the next game of the show.
Bills are playing Miami on the 31st as well. So
I'll be able to watch that game. Or are they playing? It'll be televised down here anyway, so.
My Bills and yeah, you're right. It would be.
Yeah, it's a Miami game. Every Miami.
Honestly, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank there. When that's you're in South Florida. Yeah, you'll be able to watch my Bills. So don't have a whole lot of hope for them, but for the Miami Dolphins at least against the Bills. So But hey, it's pretty much probably more Bills fans there anyway than there is Dolphins fans at this point, with all the massive migration of people. So,
you got any Halloween costumes planned for kids yet?
Yeah, my son loves Curious George, so he's a little monkey, and I'm the man in the yellow hat. And my wife still has to figure out what she's doing with our newborn, but I'm gonna look like a giant banana that day, apparently.
Oh, that's a good costume. I think we're gonna be it was between the Barbie family and between the Addams family, and I think my wife's still split on which one of the two, but I don't know what will be one of those two.
Right on. Fun stuff. You guys had cool get-ups last year, man. That was pretty sweet.
Yeah.
You did like the
Harley Quinn and the Joker.
Yeah.
And then we dressed up. Cool. Yeah, and Ava was Maggie from The Simpsons. I wanted to do the whole Simpson family. In fact, my dad's going to be in town, and so is our son. I was like, we should do like an entire like family Halloween costume. So we'll see.
That'd be cool.
Halloween's always one of my favorite holidays, so looking forward to it. Yeah. I know you guys you had some awesome. You did Star Wars last year, didn't you? Like everybody, like all of your friends?
Yeah, we pretty much all of us. I was Mando from Mandalorian. My son was Baby Yoda, Grogu, depending on how much of a Star Wars nerd you are. My wife was Leia. We had a whole bunch. We had like, dude, her cousins were.
There was like 9 people in the photo. Like I could picture the photo of everyone in it.
Yeah, there's a photo of like 10 of us. It's good. So, well, hey, good stuff. Looking forward to next week's episode. Any final thoughts, Ben?
Whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right.
And, well, I guess they're not playing next week, but in my Bills bye week until next time, go Bills.